All right, folks, here I am with Adrian Teasdale from PHP Weekly. I'm glad to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Adrian.
No, it's great. I'm more than happy to jump on and have a good chat.
Excellent, excellent. So let's start with the basics. Can you tell folks who are watching a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do for a living?
Yeah, sure. So
anything you'd like to add?
So I'm kind of 52 years old, so probably a lot older than a lot of the programmers who I tend to work with. But I started in 1994. I'd done a business degree. I'd got an idea for a technology business, and talking to programmers, I was getting a lot of negatives back. You can't do that. So I decided to teach myself to program back then. That wasn't web-based program. It wasn't PHP. It was a very simple language called Lingo, which was part of Macromedia Director, which was a software for making interactive CDs and interactive DVDs. So that's how I started before the web. When the internet came about, I started with standard HTML. I then programmed in Cold Fusion, which I think is owned by Adobe now, and then moved over to PHP, and I did PHP programming for quite some time. During this period, I set up a couple of different businesses, like a web design and software company, and spun off a few other ideas. Very quickly realized that I wasn't the best programmer. Okay, but definitely not the best, definitely not the fastest. But what had happened was the fact that I did program myself meant that when I was talking to my sort of fellow programmers who were doing work with me, it made it a lot easier because I understood their issues. I kept going with different businesses, and so currently, if you want to kind of know what I do, I kind of CEO would probably be the grand title for kind of having a few small businesses, and a team. I've got a team of around about 60, probably about 60 people, maybe a little bit more across the three businesses.
Great. So just for clarification, you're based in the UK, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm based in the UK. I never really even think of that because I work with people. You're in Argentina. I've got a few guys I work with in Argentina and have done for probably the past decade. People in Russia, Macedonia, the Philippines, and a few people in the UK as well.
Right. So you have a full distributed team. That's great. And do you ever get together, all of you, or how's that?
Not all of us. I mean, there are some businesses that operate in that way, kind of like remote first, and then they all get together. We're much looser than that. So I've met quite a few of the people who we work with in places like Amsterdam, Munich, various places like in the States. I've never actually been to Russia, although I plan to. And then we've had the opposite. So we had a couple of guys from Argentina come over just before kind of like this COVID pandemic started. They came over, stayed with us for a couple of weeks, then they kind of traveled around Europe. So pretty flexible. That's how we work.
Great. So tell me a little bit about how you got into PHP specifically.
Yeah, so I mean, as I was saying earlier, basically went from HTML through to, it was starting doing database-driven sites. And these days, that probably sounds quite amusing. But back then, people didn't know how to do it, how you would create an actual application with a database. So that's how we'd started with Cold Fusion, and I moved on to PHP primarily because it was open source. And I think at the time we'd got 4 developers, even just the license fee alone for Cold Fusion for us, and the upgrades was quite a lot of money. And we weren't making a lot of money as a business, and therefore PHP worked out quite well for us. So that's how we got into it. That would have been, I could try to think, late 90s, early 2000s, whenever it was. It's my memory gets a bit blank.
Okay. Would you say you miss Cold Fusion?
No.
All right.
Not at all. I found a leap from going from Cold Fusion to PHP. However, I think that was more my own kind of failings and issues than quality.
I guess every time you need to make this jump to a new technology, new environment, it kind of takes some time to get ramped up. But
but same concepts, just a slightly different twist on it in terms of the language.
Right. Yeah. I heard about Cold Fusion a few times. I've never used it myself, but I'm not sure it's still around nowadays. Do you?
No, I don't know. I last looked at it a number of years ago, and it was still in existence then. But I don't know if Adobe is still actively promoting it at all.
Right. So probably looking back, you would say it was a good call to switch to PHP, right?
Yeah, it was an accidental good call. Like a lot of things in life, I would probably say, luck has a big part to play in many aspects of life.
Sure. Well, you can still tell the story a different way and say, you really saw it coming.
Yeah.
It will make you look very good.
I've already been recorded now on saying the opposite, so that would be
right. Sure. All right. So I want to tell some of the people watching this that I've been a subscriber of the PHP Weekly for quite some time, and I absolutely love it. It's really packed with information But for the folks who may have never heard of it, can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how it goes?
Yeah, sure. So we started PHP Weekly a number of years ago. Again, I can't remember how long, but it's been a good few years. And what we do is we essentially go out as a team, or we get people sending links to us. So it's more curated links. We're currently not writing our own articles, although that's something we're looking at. Sort of some longer form, interesting articles for people. So it's mainly curated news. That would be things like events. It could be new tools. It could be somebody's blog post that we found that's interesting. It could be a critique on the latest version of PHP or something like that. And we put that into a newsletter and we send that out normally every Thursday. I think we've only missed in all that time a few of them.
Okay.
We up until recently, we were working with a lady who worked for me in one of my other businesses called Katie, not a programmer, but she worked with the developers and said, is this a good article? Is this not? And over time, she learned quite a bit about it and about the industry. So that's how we started. It's not, it costs me money. I don't make any money.
Okay.
We do take a little bit of advertising from time to time, from adverts through to job posts, but it's very much a side project for us. And I think it's just been nice that we've never been able to give back to the PHP community in terms of code commits and things like that, or helping out with open source software. So that's where it came about from. It was a nice way of kind of giving back.
Right.
And that's where we are now. I think moving forward, to be able to sustain it, I've probably got to commercialize it slightly.
Right. Okay, great. So I'm curious about how do you decide which, what things to include in an issue and what things to leave behind?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got an easy answer on that one. So it used to be Katie who would be the kind of gatekeeper, because what we do get is we get people who essentially are trying to market through us. So they might have a really interesting product, but they'll start bombarding us with too many blog posts. And when you recognize it's a fine line between us helping somebody to market their product and us helping our audience out and providing them with something of interest. So Katie used to be a great gatekeeper for that. We've got a lady again from our team called Veronica, and we've got a couple of the guys who help out with that. It's not always easy. We're not always perfect. We get told very quickly by people if we put an article or a link to an article in that they consider to be not of the best quality.
Okay.
I think people don't always realize that this is a volunteer kind of run. Yeah. We do get people saying, why have you put this in? This is terrible. But that's life. I'm kind of old enough now to.
Yeah, sure.
And I think it usually comes from a from a positive place from them. They're trying to help you out, but I think they sometimes think of us as some big corporation churning out this newsletter.
Right.
Isn't the case. But I would probably say most of the stuff that we're putting in is probably people submitting, hey, this is a great article, you should have a look at this. And we tend to recognize the people who are submitting, who submits good quality links for us and who doesn't. So that's what we do. That's our process. It's not, we have got a written down process, but it's loose.
I see. Okay, so I was just thinking while you were telling me this that perhaps you could, like, I don't know if you will be willing to do this, but maybe like forming some sort of a editorial committee of volunteers to help you with this.
We've had people in the past who have suggested it. Yeah, like anybody, best intent. You come along, you go, I love PHP Weekly. Yeah, I'd love to get involved. Can I help you guys out? I would say 9 times out of 10, we go back, and then they usually end up being too busy to follow through on that. But I think there's a great community. There are some other great publications out there. Some that are similar, some that are longer form. PHP Classes is one, which has been around a long time. So I think, across the community of PHP developers and fans, I think there's definitely that out there. I think as we move to our new version, I think there's going to be more opportunity there. And I think it'll be less about people submitting stuff to us for us to just put in a newsletter. But I think it will be more, how can we get some really good long format educational pieces in there, working collaboratively with others, as you've just said, which will help to keep taking the community together, because there's always a pull from other programming languages to move elsewhere. Like the new shiny thing, and PHP has been around a long time and has had its issues over the years. So I think the more that we can help it to sustain and grow in a positive way, the better.
Sure. I had a thought in my head that it's gone now. Going to come back. So I'll go back to my questions and I'll ask the other one when it comes back. So since you don't really work with PHP, do you produce any other similar newsletter like a Python Weekly or any other thing like that?
No. There is. There are other ones, like there's Ruby Weekly. Those guys run a few. We've spoken to them before about maybe collaborating, but they weren't interested. They're quite commercial. No, this is very much a side project for me. I have a business intelligence business which takes up a lot of my time. So no, I still like doing it. It's one of those things that we've been doing it for some time now. I'd hate to stop, but we've not had any desire to create any programming related newsletters. I do have some other ideas, but as every entrepreneur does, you have a million ideas. It's picking the ones that you should work on. And currently my kind of main business brings me, more than enough work on a daily basis than creating something else.
Right.
I mean,
go ahead.
I was just saying we kind of have a mix now of different programming languages that we use internally. We still do have some PHP. We're doing a little bit more in PHP again, but it comes from the developers. So actually, it was some Argentinian developers who were kind of put the blame on them that we kind of moved a little bit to Python for some of our tools a number of years ago, when I thought PHP might have lost its way a little bit. But I think subsequently it's come back. There's a lot of great tools and frameworks now that didn't exist before. So we are looking again at where we can use PHP within our core technologies.
Yeah, I had the kind of the same feeling like in the past, maybe, I don't know, 5 years or so. It's been amazing, the evolution of the language and all the great people that got involved in putting really, really advanced features to it. So it's, yeah, I think it's really, really interesting what you can do with PHP nowadays. And so I remember what I wanted to ask you, and this is on the terms of the content that you build into the PHP Weekly. Perhaps have you ever like been approached by somebody and saying like, "Oh, do you have any article on X topic?" And so perhaps you could like reshare that in the newsletter, like, "Hey, so is there someone willing to write about X, or do you have any, something like that? Do you get this kind of request?"
No, we've never we've never had a request, but I think that's because we're more push than pull. You know,
Right.
in terms of how we operate, it's very much we just disseminate that information. I say the normal stuff we get are people complaining that we've put something of a low quality. We never really get anybody saying, "Oh, it would be great if you could do an article on this or an article on this." But maybe that's something that we could build into the website itself, or into maybe some of the publications to say, hey, what would you guys want the most? You know, what kind of topics, subjects? I think it's always easy for seasoned developers to forget what it was like to start. And I think the great thing for me, being the age I am, is that when I started with programming, I didn't have much choice. There was like, well, you do this or this. Whereas these days, what do you, which database do you choose, for example? There's so many different choices. Do you go cloud? Do you build on your own servers? Even choice of programming language. It's very, very complex for somebody entering. So I like helping people out. That's one of the things I do. I do mentor some young entrepreneurs, and all in the tech space. And what I do see is quite often they end up nearly sort of paralyzed because of too much choice and too much information. And I think if we can help to signpost for, let's say you take new developers who want to get involved in PHP. Maybe you've got a developer who's done PHP for a little while, but has got an opportunity for something, whether they're building their own or a job where they have to scale, So it's that side of stuff. So, helping people to get involved, helping people to scale. Maybe it would be topics on security, building the most secure code, and maybe working with partners on that. That's where I would like to take it, so that it's really, really useful, and maybe some deeper kind of knowledge.
Right. I see. So yeah, I'm thinking, well, this is an idea I'm working on myself, like kind of a roadmap for developers to take their knowledge to the next level. Like once you've established the basics, the way to program, and perhaps you even know a little bit about object-oriented development, but there are so many things on top of that are not really necessarily easy to figure out on your own. So, and basically all of the choices, that's a very big pain point that I see with young developers all the time, like, where should I go now?
It's huge. It's huge. I think that if you take it away from just PHP and you take it to kind of like all development, I think that's the biggest issue, is where do you get good quality advice from? At a very, very simplistic level, if you just look at computers, do you use a Mac or a PC or that's that. But if you are suddenly doing something where you're needing to deal with millions of records flowing in every minute, what do you do then? And you can go to sites like High Availability and things like that, but it very, very quickly you can get bogged down. So maybe it's good quality articles or videos or tutorials to help people and signpost what would be considered best practice. Or maybe what you do is you say, look, out of the people who are in this community, I'll take PHP Weekly as an example. So we've got a lot of subscribers. Out of those people, is there anyone here, whether it's on a consultancy capacity or maybe just a friendly mentoring capacity, who might be able to just help somebody? Because when I first started programming, I was involved with the PHP listserv. I don't know if it still exists or if anyone ever uses things like that. But the way it worked, just for anyone who doesn't know, is you would send an email to an email address that would then create a digest of that, and once a day, I think you could set it to receive many more than this, but I'd set it for once a day. You would get one big email with everybody's emails from that day. So I would send an email in saying, look, I'm trying to do this, I'm getting stuck, this is where I'm, then somebody would step in and respond and say, oh, you want to try this, and this. I just remember that without that help and support at the very beginning, I wouldn't be able to be any kind of developer. I wouldn't have then maybe had the ability to create my own business and deal with other developers from there. So I do think of it as a really important point in anybody's kind of career. If we're talking about career, I mean, obviously a lot of people just do this for fun as well.
Well, I think that's one of the great things about, well, not particularly PHP, but I would say IT in general, is this ability to interact with people all over the world in a very collaborative way. And I'm pretty active in many forums of, well, PHP developers mostly, but everybody knows Stack Overflow, or they should if they don't. And I am not using that much these days, but every now and then I go there, and every time I get help by very very nice people, and obviously I try to give back when I can. But yeah, so I totally agree that it's very, very important. Not only when you're first starting. I think that every one of us, every senior developer is using Google and Stack Overflow all the time.
Yeah, and things move forward. Even to the point of using the cloud these days. Somebody who has grown up traditionally, they've got some either web hosting, or they've then got their own sort of bare metal server and set that up, and then suddenly they find they need to scale, or maybe they only need scaling. So I had this problem with some crawlers we were building. We literally only needed these crawlers for like 2 hours a day, but at the time the cloud didn't exist. So we went and rented some servers that were sat there idle for 90% of the day. But we needed this. We were collecting news at the time. These days with the cloud, it's great, but again, it's another step. You've got some more learning that you have to do. It's constant learning. That would probably be the best way to describe what
absolutely.
Programming.
Yeah, I think if you don't really enjoy learning new things and keeping up, you made the wrong career choice probably.
Absolutely. If you try and stand still and just stick to what you know, you'll be moving backwards very quickly.
Yep. Absolutely. So I wanted to pick up on something you mentioned about the PHP classes, and I've been a user of that site also for quite some time, but I haven't really made much use of it lately. And I was wondering if maybe the composer appearance, or mostly the packages.org appearance kind of left them aside, or how do you feel about that?
Maybe I'm seeing them adjusting. I mean, I got some Black Friday emails from them. Like any business, if we can treat it as a business, it has to evolve in the same way as we've been saying about individuals evolving. Sometimes that happens because you see the future and you jump before it happens, and then sometimes you need a bit of a push when you suddenly realize that you are behind where everybody else is. So I'd probably say slightly less relevant than it used to be, but I'm seeing a push from them to move move the business. I think they're based in South America somewhere. I must admit,
Really?
I'm not sure it's
I'm gonna have to look it up. I don't know.
Yeah. I've spoken to them a few times. They're great guys, and I think
Cool.
that, again, very, very passionate, as most people.
Great. Great. So now I wanted to ask you this question. That, as I mentioned, I've been a subscriber of PHP Weekly, but I don't remember exactly when I signed up, but it's definitely been a few years. And just recently, I noticed that you mentioned in your newsletter, like, hey, connect with me on LinkedIn and stuff. And that's how we connected in the first place. So sure. I was wondering how many people take you up on that.
Not many.
Okay.
Maybe 5 a week, something like that.
Oh,
maybe a little bit more. Everyone who I connect with, I try and have a little conversation with anyway. I say I quite like helping people. I mentor quite a few people already. It's just nice to connect
cool.
with people. As I say, all we do is we take some information and we push it out, and sometimes it's nice to see that there are real people behind this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real people receiving it, real people reading it, and getting benefit from it.
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'm out of questions. So, is there anything else you want to share with the people who are watching?
No, not really. I think it's been a really useful conversation for me. I think it's great to meet you. I hope people get something from this. But if there's ever any ideas as to how we can improve, or if anybody wants to get involved even a little bit, then reach out to me.
Great. So that will be the last question is, how would they reach out to you if they wanted to connect?
Yeah, I mean, either on the PHP Weekly site, you can or subscribe to the newsletter. You'll find a link to my LinkedIn. That's I don't tend to use social media too much. My kids do. I don't know how they have the time. They use everything, and I'm a little bit more. I read a lot of books and things. But if somebody wants to kind of reach out and speak to me, probably via LinkedIn, I would say either look me up under Adrian Teasdale. I don't think there's many on there, or PHP Weekly. They'll find me on there. Okay,
great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, for talking and sharing, your story. I believe it's inspirational, if anything, and I very much enjoy your newsletter. So I hope you keep it up. And it's great. So thank you.
Will do. Thanks very much for your time. You take care.